Because in that moment, you become the mirror they cannot face. You reflect back their original wound, and it terrifies them. That's when the backpedaling begins. Silent treatment, ghosting, coldness. Not because you've done something wrong, but because their illusion has cracked in your presence. You've become a witness to their inner failure, and that's a kind of shame they can't survive. The fourth spiritual payment is even more devastating: the loss of divine relationships. True connection becomes a foreign language. Why? Because intimacy is a soul exchange, and that's the very thing they sold away. They may be surrounded by people, but there's no spiritual bond. It's all hollow, a crowd of masks dancing in the dark. Spiritually, they are isolated in a room full of bodies because they no longer speak the language of the soul. And finally, the ultimate price, their connection to divine truth itself. Over time, their false narrative becomes their only reality. They no longer recognize truth because it doesn't serve them. The lies they tell others become the lies they believe. They self-gaslight. They lose the ability to feel the difference between what's real and what's fabricated. And you've seen it. You've seen how they lie without flinching, how they inflict pain and then act as if nothing ever happened. That's not just denial, that's soul decay. Their conscience isn't asleep, it's been buried, silenced, not by anyone else, but by their own hand. You've watched them twist your words, reshape reality, make you question your spiritual clarity. That's not confusion, it's intentional distortion. Because once they rejected the light, they fully committed to the shadow. They didn't just float with darkness, they married it. This isn't someone in crisis, waiting to be rescued. This is someone who has made their choice. Their allegiance is no longer to truth or growth. It is to the maintenance of the lie. The false self has become their god, and its survival is all that matters. Strip that false self away, and what remains? Nothing, just a void. And that, to the narcissist, is the ultimate terror. Not death, but non-existence. And so, they will protect the mask at all costs. You must understand, you are not speaking to their soul. That soul stopped showing up a long time ago. You are speaking to a crafted entity, a character engineered to maintain control of the spiritual narrative. And until you accept this, you will keep reaching for something that simply doesn't exist anymore. But the moment you accept that they have chosen illusion over divinity, you free yourself. You stop hoping they'll wake up. You stop waiting for spiritual justice to reach their heart. You stop praying they'll hear God, because they've already unplugged from the frequency where divine truth speaks. Once you awaken to the truth that they've exchanged their soul's capacity for empathy in return for fleeting illusions, power, control, admiration, you'll stop waiting for them to care. You'll stop expecting them to reflect on the damage they've done to your spirit. Because the truth is sobering, they simply do not care. Not because they are unaware, but because they've severed the very part of themselves that could hold such awareness. Now is the moment to choose. Not them, you. Choose the path that alters everything about your future. Not the one that loops in grief, longing, or questions, but the one that plants you firmly back in your body, back in your truth. Let this choice be the first of many that remind you how deeply worthy you are, of peace, of love, of authenticity. Let it teach you to fall in love with your voice again, with your silence, with your boundaries, with every sacred truth your soul has whispered to you when no one else was listening. Because when you return to yourself, when you remember that home was never in them, but always within you, you begin to reclaim your power in the most divine way imaginable. You stop just surviving and start living in alignment with your purpose. You no longer move through life trying to be enough for others. You begin to embody the truth that you already are. So as we close this chapter, I want to thank you deeply for walking through this truth with me. Whether you listened or watched, your presence here matters. I'll be back soon with another message that speaks to your healing and your power. And until then, stay grounded in your light. Stay rooted in your truth. And as always, have a nice day, everyone. This is the dark truth behind how a narcissist sells their soul to the devil. Hi everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a truth so dark and haunting that once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. how the narcissist has already sold their soul to the devil, and how you, perhaps unknowingly, witnessed the very moment that transaction took place. Think back to the last time they wounded you, not by accident, but with surgical precision. Remember how swiftly they flipped the script, casting you as the villain, making you question your own sanity. That wasn't just manipulation. That was a performance staged by someone whose spiritual core has been severed, someone who has traded divine connection for control, who has forsaken light for the illusion of power. You saw it. Maybe it was in the dead, empty stare they gave you after promising to change. Maybe it was when they stole the credit for something you worked so hard for, while subtly poisoning your self-worth. Or maybe it was in that chilling moment when your tears rolled down and they didn't even flinch, watching you unravel with the cold detachment of someone whose heart has been sealed shut. These aren't isolated incidents. This isn't just bad behavior. What you're witnessing is the pattern of a person who has stepped fully into the realm of darkness, who is being animated by something far more sinister than just pride or insecurity. You're not just dealing with psychological dysfunction. You're facing spiritual warfare. Now you might be wondering, are we talking about literal demons, supernatural forces? I won't insult your intelligence with a simple yes or no. What I will say is this: once you view your interactions with a narcissist through a spiritual lens, everything begins to make sense. You'll understand why they always seem 10 steps ahead in manipulating reality, why they feel nothing after inflicting pain, and why they seem utterly disconnected from the divine compass that governs most of humanity. It's because they are. They've chosen illusion over integrity, power over presence, and ego over essence. At some point in their lives, they decided that vulnerability was too dangerous, that authenticity was too costly. So they built an entire false self, an identity stitched together from lies, projections, and illusions. And that false self isn't just a defense mechanism. It's a mask worn by someone who's lost all access to their own soul. And that's the essence of the deal with the devil. Not a pitchfork or flaming signature, but a conscious rejection of the truth in favor of deception. A trade where they gave up their divine spark in exchange for domination, control, and illusionary safety. So when they gaslight you, twist your words, and perform their cruelty with a smile, know this: you're not dealing with someone who merely lacks empathy. You're dealing with someone who abandoned their humanity long ago. That's why no apology from them ever holds. That's why they can repeat the same harm day after day without guilt. Because they are no longer guided by the spiritual codes that govern the rest of us. And whether you believe in the devil or not, understand this: the narcissist has entered a spiritual contract, one that explains their inhumanity, their coldness, and their relentless destruction of anything pure. But sustaining this false identity doesn't come without a cost. In fact, the price they pay would shake most souls to the core. What horrifies you and me, what would send most people running toward the light, is what the narcissist willingly embraces. When I say they've made a deal with the devil, I'm not talking about some mythological being with horns and fire. I'm talking about a soul-level contract forged with the darkest corners of their own being, the shadow self that feeds on illusion, dominance, and fear. And that contract, it's sealed the very moment they choose their ego over their essence. When the craving to be admired outweighs the need to be known. When they decide that wielding control is more rewarding than offering love. That's when the transaction occurs. When they trade divine connection for artificial power, and their capacity for spiritual love is handed over for worldly gain. Let me paint this clearly. Imagine a soul raised in an environment where love came with conditions. Maybe they only felt valued when they performed. Maybe they only felt safe when they manipulated the environment around them. Maybe, early on, they learned that vulnerability led to danger. So what did they do? They built armor, a false self so carefully crafted it seemed impenetrable to divine truth. But here's the catch: to wear this armor, they had to pay a spiritual toll. They had to disown their authentic essence. They had to silence the voice of their real self, the one rooted in innocence and divine connection. They had to vow never to reveal their core again, never to be real, never to surrender to love. Instead, they promised to be right, to be superior, to dominate, and to win. And in return, they lost everything that makes the soul feel alive. You might be asking yourself, why would anyone choose this path? Why would any soul agree to such a dreadful bargain? The answer is survival. In that moment of internal collapse, when their spirit felt fractured and threatened, detaching from their true self seemed like the only way to survive. But make no mistake, this was not about resilience. This was about avoidance. The narcissists believed they could have power without growth, worship without worthiness, superiority without soul. They thought they'd found a shortcut, a way to rise above others without ever looking within. They didn't choose healing. They chose control. And what I'm offering you here isn't an excuse, it's clarity. Because many of you watching this know what it's like to be broken. You've faced trauma, abandonment, abuse. And yet, you didn't become them. You became empathetic. You chose compassion. So no, it's not the pain that makes someone a narcissist. It's the choices they make in response to that pain. The spiritual sacrifices they're willing to make and repeat until it becomes their identity. Just like any deal with dark forces, the price only goes up. What begins as a desperate decision soon becomes a life of escalating spiritual debt. Let me show you how that spiral unfolds. The first thing they lose is their divine authenticity. That spark we're all born with, the one that connects us to our purpose, our truth, our soul's voice, is silenced. They become hollow performers, trading masks and roles instead of building real connection. Every relationship becomes a stage. Every interaction, a manipulation. They don't relate, they transact. Then, they pay with their empathy. That sacred capacity to feel with others, to recognize another person's pain as if it were their own, must be sacrificed to uphold the false self. They have to numb it, because if they allowed themselves to feel what others feel, it would shatter the delusion. They cannot afford compassion, because compassion would reveal their own buried wounds. And so, with each spiritual payment, they drift further from the soul they once were. The third toll a narcissist pays is their inner peace. When you're cut off from your own soul, every breath becomes a form of spiritual labor. They are constantly on guard, always bracing for the moment someone might glimpse what lies beneath a mask. Vulnerability becomes a threat, an existential danger. And that's exactly why they rage when you see through them.